I have returned from the wilds of Florida and Orlando and heat stroke and all those fun things that you get to do in Florida. I'm back, and today on SDL, Remote Doug, so not me, that's the other one, gets to interview the amazing Ned Pyle, who's a Microsoft program manager and storage guru. I mean, this guy turned off server messaging block 1.0 on 2 billion machines in one day. So, like, that's kind of a, that big switch flip in the sky that every now and then you get to do. He's also a career expert and does a lot of talks with Microsoft. I am going to add, I have not done it yet, I promise I will. I'm going to add the show notes, the link to his talk on careers. So if you're interested in career stuff, either with Microsoft and just in general. So he knows a lot about that, and he knows a little bit about Star Wars, but he wasn't able to answer my trivia question. You can see that. So stick around and check out the cool interview with Remote Doug from Microsoft Ignite in Orlando on Secure Digital Life.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. If your users are going to keep putting risky stuff on your machine, you're screwed. So Tom can help us understand the complexity of blockchain.
I was reading through the show notes, man.
Oof. In binary, it would be 001. Who cares? But it's probably not significant anyway. Be like you're looking out through the HAL dot,
oh,
hey Dave.
It's like Sims, but with,
It would be like Sims.
Instead of AI, it's only.
Are you working on earning your Security Plus certification? Earn your certification faster and smarter with Cybex. Their courses and guides are compiled with CompTIA-approved content, providing you with the knowledge to be fully prepared on exam day. The Cybex Security Plus Gold course includes a partner till you pass guarantee. Users enjoy free course updates and repeats until you pass the Security Plus exam. Learn more and register for a free trial today at cybex.com/go/free trial. When you are ready to purchase, save 50% with code SECURITY50. Hurry, this offer ends December 31st. Accredited by Microsoft, Cisco, NetApp, IDLE, Oracle, and EC Council, QuickStart delivers high-impact, low-cost IT training through its cognitive learning platform in multiple domains. With QuickStart, you get an ever-growing catalog of courses, self-paced courses offered through a monthly subscription, virtual classrooms offered through an annual subscription, peer-to-peer learning, mentoring, official courses, certified instructors, hands-on labs, and more. For more information, visit www.quickstart.com. Use coupon code PAUL20 to get 20% off on all cybersecurity courses. Quick Start, creating world-class technologists. Hi, this is Doug White from Security Weekly, joining you from Orlando, Florida on the last and final day of Microsoft Ignite, where they had a big party last night at Universal Studios with all the beer and turkey legs you could consume. So yeah, it's like drink beer, eat turkey legs, and get on things that spin you around really, really fast. I'm the host of Secure Digital Life, and today I'm fortunate enough to get to talk with Ned Pyle, who's a principal program manager at Microsoft and an expert on storage, among other things, here on the conference floor. So that's pretty cool. So our show is for people who are just getting into security. There's a lot of focus on, there's a lot of interest in this realm, people who want to get started in security. But I was going to ask you a question first, because I saw on your profile pic you had Star Wars on your shirt.
Yeah.
So you're a Star Wars fan?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in the mid-'70s. It's required by law that I be a Star Wars fan.
Okay. Well, I was with this. So this is one of my trivia questions from Hacker Movie Trivia.
All right.
And I have Star Wars. Do you know, and this is one of the hardest ones, so I saved it for you, yeah. Do you know what the original name of Star Wars was? He's going to know this, I think.
I don't know if I know the original name of Star Wars. I know, like, the code name when they were trying to make the next Star Wars, the Blue Harvest stuff. And
right,
like
but there was an original name he used as a working title of Star Wars, and before the studio went, no, it really should be Star Wars.
I really just finished reading a Star Wars trivia book, and so I should have. So you're catching me on the last day of Ignite.
It's okay.
But go ahead and say it so I can say I did know that.
It was Adventures of Luke Starkiller as taken from the Journal of Wheels, Saga 1, The Star Wars.
I absolutely did not know that, and that's a terrible title.
Yeah, that's probably why somebody said, you know, George, maybe you can keep the merchandising rights, but maybe we just go with Star Wars, like not even just Star Wars. Wouldn't that be better? I just thought I would see. I knew you were a fan, so
He always goes.
that's an obscure question, and nobody ever gets that question.
I won't get it 5 minutes from now. I can't even repeat that trivia question. Holy crap.
So anyway, so one of the things I want to talk to you about because of your expertise was about SMB.
Yeah.
So SMB comes up over and over and over again. You know, when they're talking about security, they're talking about hacks, they're talking about 0 days, all kinds of stuff comes up around SMB, and it's obviously there's some issues with it in terms of there's some problems. So could you maybe just tell us something like what is it and what does it do?
Sure. So SMB itself is a family of protocols. It dates back to the late 80s. And the problematic one, the one that really is troublesome to people, is SMB1, which came out approximately when I was in high school, and I'm guessing that your producer wasn't born then. So SMB1 is what the main protocol of like XP and Windows 2000 and NT4 had, and it lingers on as a highly compatible protocol that Windows hasn't used in more than 10 years. We stopped using it after Vista. We shipped a protocol called SMB 2.02 and then 2.1, which is in Windows 7. I'm sure everybody you work with, that listens to you has some Windows 7. And then starting in Windows 8 and now in Windows 10, we have SMB 3. And SMB 3 was designed with security as its main focus. But SMB 1 was designed for a time when, how can I get the fastest, easiest connectivity with the least amount of work, which is back in the 80s, like the way you did things. And nowadays, who cared, right? And now it's the way that you just own stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think a lot of that persists because of legacy stuff. I mean, people still keep embedding this product in old code that they have from the 80s probably that they just sort of roll forward. I mean, not Windows, but I developed an application back in 1989 and I used SMB1 and it's still there. Sure. And maybe I patched a few things, but I never bothered to update it.
Yeah, I can tell you a few things about that. We keep telemetry, obviously, using Windows. Nobody likes telemetry, but it actually is incredibly helpful for us for problems like this. And I can tell you two things from telemetry. One, the use of SMB1 inside of a world where Windows 10 and 2016 and 19 are talking to stuff, depending on the environment, educational versus professional versus home and stuff, it's still like around anywhere from 15 to 25% based on the environment. Wow. It's still very high. But it's very high because it's mostly talking to, at this point, devices and Linux machines, where that's where probably 98% of the SMB1 actually is required.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's where I've seen it the most is just like it's out. And, again, it's in all legacy stuff. It's in legacy code that's on Linux machines that have never been upgraded because when I do consulting, I'll go in and they have servers sitting there that have been running for 25, 30 years, and they've never upgraded them or updated them. They're just sort of sitting there.
Yeah, I keep a clearinghouse that we make public. It's at aka.ms, still needs SMB1, and it's just a list of software and third parties mainly. Printers, giant, multi-function printers like the kind you would buy from that would take up this room. Software, a lot of security software, like antivirus. The vendors who do the security stuff, they would have all this legacy things running around. They would run extremely old versions of Samba, or extremely old versions of the Linux CIFS client in the kernel. And at this point, there's no supported version of Windows that needs SMB1 for anything, not for years. That whole body out there is mostly just third parties. Some of it very new. I mean, some of it will come out right now and just be using SMB1 because some manufacturer overseas just put whatever version of Samba on, they felt like putting on there.
That and coders don't know what they're doing with stuff like that sometimes, and they
grab some module off GitHub. It uses SMB1.
Exactly, they just go out and get something and says this will facilitate what I'm trying to do, and they don't even look at it that it was.
There's a whole class of storage like home NASs and mid-range NASs where they intentionally still use SMB1 for maximum compatibility.
Right,
because they'll know that anything until I turned it off, which I did turn it off.
Turn it off.
And I started making it no longer appear in Windows 10, and of course, that was a brutal exercise for me because that's 2 billion machines out there, 2 billion
Right.
clients, where I suddenly started, making SMB1 not be a thing. It's a hugely used protocol.
It's a thing that needs to go away.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it desperately needs to be hunted down and exterminated.
Yeah,
Worse than that's one of the worst ones. Could you just tell everybody what it does though?
Sure.
Well, like what is this protocol? Even the good version of the protocol all do similar things. So would you just share with us a little bit about what SMB actually does?
Sure. SMB as a family, it's a server message block, is it's a really very flexible application layer protocol. Runs at the top of TCP. It also is. We also make a piece, an add-on for it called SMB Direct that will run on top of RDMA networks. Ultra fast networks. But generally speaking, people are using it on regular TCP, Ethernet networks, and at its basis, it will just help you copy files. It's a remote file system that mounts an external server's local file system. So if I map a drive to a UNC path, / some server / some share, that remote file system becomes exposed, and I can just party on it as if I was on my local hard drive. It also, though, is an application transport itself for other applications. Because it uses UNC paths, it supports things like name pipes, LSA RPC, and a bunch of other, especially older protocols that for management purposes and security purposes that ride on top of SMB. That most people don't make them like that anymore, although they sometimes do. And it's designed to let you run apps over SMB. So it's not just a simple file copier. And then in the modern iteration in SMB3, we use it as a very modern, fast transport for blocks. So storage spaces direct, storage replica, Hyper-V live migration. All of these things use SMB as their own transport because in the latest versions, it's very secure and very fast.
And so it does a lot of things.
It does a ton of things.
To sum it up in that one sentence,
Yeah.
it does all sorts of things, but it's basically a communications protocol that transfers things from place to place on your system. So if you're trying to have information about storage, of information about different things, you can use this protocol, which is really all that it is ultimately.
Yeah.
It's just a protocol like all other protocols, and things can be embedded in it that can be shared among all these different machines that are running the same protocol.
Yeah.
So application developers use it. They used it for all sorts of different purposes. It can be used for very nice, straight up legitimate things, and then people realized there was ways to use it because you could communicate and you could share all sorts of illegitimate things as well. And once that started happening, SMB1 became this very threatening thing, and we see that still today. We see exploits and things coming out. A second thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was about cloud storage. I get asked this a lot and again, this is not big enterprise, although I get asked this by big enterprise sometimes too, about moving things into the cloud. So there's a lot of focus on that, about taking our storage, and now because the internet is becoming more and more seamless all the time. So I like the idea of the cloud, and I've spent all the time we've been here talking to different people about different things about it. But I love the idea that I can take this or this or whatever, and I can go from place to place, and all my things are still there. Yep. I don't have to worry about, I've got a different laptop today. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna take this and put it on floppy disks and copy it over. So I can just connect to OneDrive, or I can connect to any sort of cloud storage thing. Do you think that's a good idea for people to be doing that?
Just using regular cloud, file sync options and stuff.
Why not?
I think it's generally speaking an okay idea. You want to be real careful about whose cloud you're going to, and where you're putting stuff. I mean, as soon as you put things into a cloud, and I don't want to get too down on them because I make one of the largest ones in the world. But it's no longer your data at that point, right? You're trusting somebody to hold on to something for you. And if you trust somebody like Microsoft or Amazon or Google, that's a fairly trustworthy thing. They're not going to intentionally try to do something evil with it. And they're going to do a really, really, really good job trying to protect it from others, because reputationally, if somebody hacked Amazon, that would cause their stock to go into the basement, and the company might, suffer greatly. And
that was kind of where we came around to. I was talking to some people, different people from different perspectives about the cloud. But what I've been telling my clients is look, I realize that you're having to make a sort of sacrifice, but when you talk about Bert's down in the basement with a server rack. You're putting an awful lot of trust in Bert.
Yeah.
And you're basically saying this guy, Bert, is going to sit down in my basement. He's not going to go crazy. He's not going to suddenly decide to wipe all the drives because he got mad about that promotion he didn't get or whatever. Sure. And, he's not going to tell you he's making backups and actually not make backups. Right. None of that ever happens in the real world. And with the cloud, you actually get to a point where you are sort of you're spreading the risk across a lot of different people, because there's all these people sharing in this. So it's not just you that's going to get hurt if something goes wrong. It could be a massive problem. Like you say, the stock price goes through the floor, and so the company that's involved in that is going to be really, 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 really sorry when that comes out, because as all of you know, when you see those records going out, or you see these attacks and these threats and these break-ins going out in public, the companies really suffer from whatever sort of problem that they get, and that's going to happen too when you start dealing with these kind of storage solutions. And if somebody reveals and they say, Doug's cloud service got compromised last night and everybody's records were not only stolen, then they were destroyed, and I'm not going to be in business very, very long. And
we believe in it enough that we actually started integrating SMB with cloud services, because we know that we have so many users of SMB around the world. But it doesn't really, it's not a protocol that easily goes over the internet, because oftentimes just firewalls and stuff, it's mostly a LAN and WAN and a big network protocol. So we built this thing called the Azure File Sync service, which you could drop on top of your Windows servers, and it just creates an agent with a web connection to Azure. And as you have the file server, you're just doing SMB file services all day like normal, nice and fast, because the clouds tend to be a lot less fast. Your data is actually background syncing up into Azure in order to be copied or replicated to other branch offices, or simply just to be protected up there and just be a much larger pool of storage. I mean, your hard drive on your file server, let's say, can hold a terabyte of data, and maybe you get 4 or 5 of them. Maybe it holds, maybe 3 terabytes of data. That's one drive in Azure times a storage cluster that has 250 nodes in it, that has 24 drives in it. That's just one cluster in one rack of one section of one Azure data center. Like they're getting into the exabyte ranges
and
now
there's like
already.
50 something data centers.
I mean, at least I think there's possibly
52.
I can't
somebody told us
possibly
that.
keep track of it anymore. They're building them like per country now.
Right.
So in the end, you can take Azure File Sync, which is a little free agent you drop on there. You get an Azure subscription. You're still doing SMB locally, and then it's putting stuff into Azure Files, the Azure File Service in Azure, for you to be able to pull back down if you need it. It actually looks and sees like, nobody's touched these files in a while. Let me cache them and tear them out.
Right.
And it's getting kind of hot. Let me bring it back down and let it. It has a little filter driver that watches for activity. It basically learns what your
and that's getting more seamless though too.
I mean, you can't tell. You can't tell.
People are going to start being with SMB or whatever, just a share that's in a cloud, or they're going to know where those shares actually reside. It's just going to be, you're going to load your machine up, and I've got here's a share from work and here's a share from home. And I mean, I know there's some security issues around, like how can you just intermingle all this stuff, but I think people are moving down that road, and I've seen more companies that are starting to do that, and they want employees to have access to things at home. So they can work, because it's like if people are willing to sit around on a Saturday and work, why not let them sit around on a Saturday and work?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but it's the truth, and I love having access to my files, so that if I do that, if I have a student give me a paper, and they submit that paper, they can put it in a folder. I have access to that folder here. I have it on my phone. I have it on my desktop at home. I have it on some machine I sit down in front of in a library, and I can get into all that stuff without all the security issues or FERPA issues or whatever you want to talk about. But the basis of that is that it's seamless, and that it's allowing people to start moving through the world, having all that data right wherever they want to have it.
Sure.
Where do you think all that goes? I mean, so where does that start to evolve into now? So server messaging block 3 is being used. I mean, is there some next sort of place? Is storage going to change? Are we going to see some big difference in the way storage works in not distant future, but just?
Yeah, I mean, we've already started working on some concepts like that on my team of like, where's the future of SMB? Because it's impossible to get rid of the protocol.
Right.
It's just too baked into the ecosystem after 30 years,
and it works great,
and every it's very seamless. It's back from a time when compatibility was more important than anything, and nowadays it's much more it's not so much the case. You watch, an Apple, each release, they're like, we're just going to make some things go away. And me getting rid of SMB1, which I started doing in Windows 10, like actually making it not ship on or actually making it turn itself off, took me 5 years to get that in place, just convincing customers and my own management that was going to be okay. It was just a very hard slog for us to finally. I sort of broke the new road, the new plow, the new way of how to get rid of something at Microsoft because it hadn't really been a thing before.
It's really tough to go to. I mean, I have a lot of smaller and middle-sized clients every now and then, and it's really tough to go to those businesses and say, "Here's the thing you've been doing."
Yeah.
You've been doing it for 15 years, and you say, well, Windows 98 is really, really old, and it's end of life, and maybe you shouldn't be using it. I mean, they're not supporting it anymore. And they go, well, how would you suggest we pay for the upgrade?
Right.
We have to upgrade hardware, we have to upgrade training, we have to upgrade all these steps, and they're like, and our budget for all that is zero.
Right.
And so that's tough. And the same thing with SMB or anything else is when you go to them and you say, this is a massive threat and you need to get rid of this application that you're using here. And they go, well, that's the application that controls all those valves.
Yeah.
And I know, but it's using SMB1 and it's like a huge threat. You have to isolate it and you've got this connected to the internet. And they're like, oh, how do we do that? And it's just, on and on. And it's not always so easy just to say, get rid of it. And they say, we'd have to redevelop this piece of custom software that was developed in 1987. But we still use it.
By that telemetry I was talking about before, I can see down to the individual protocol, and I can see the pre-SMB1 protocols like WFW, Windows Forward Groups Protocol, PC LAN, and those things. And about half of, maybe like 0.05% of the traffic I still see from Windows 10 is going to DOS LAN Manager, probably on industrial milling machines. Because if I'm seeing big files being copied over DOS machines, that means some CNC milling machine is still running DOS from the 80s, and that thing is a tank that will never go away.
And it works, and they don't want to replace it, and all the workers are trained on it, and they come in every day and do their job.
Covered in grime and grease. It's never going
to
get replaced because it was built an M1 Abrams.
Yeah, we found a server sitting in the bottom of a closet in a firehouse one time that was doing all this stuff for this town.
Yeah.
And it had no monitor, no keyboard, no nothing. It was just like a rack server. It was laying on the floor. It was covered up with all kinds of old fire gear, and it was just laying there. And that thing was in there churning, been running 12 years up, and it had been sitting there running, and they didn't even really know what it did, but it was actually doing a lot of management tasks for the.
Gosh.
Yeah, you get stuff like that, and it's really tough with all that legacy stuff. Well, let's take a little bit of time and shift gears. And I know that one of your other interests is careers and how people get careers in these areas. I get asked that a lot. I get a lot of people coming and going, how can I get into this? One of my answers is always you got to be interested in it. You got to like it. It's a cultural mindset, not just I took a course. But how did you get started in this field?
I'm old enough where I got started by tricking my way into the field back in the 90s, right? So not knowing really enough, but nobody knew anything back then, so it was kind of easy to sort of fake it. So after I gotten out of the service, I was just kind of bumming around a little bit. Didn't know quite what to do at that point. A newspaper ad, this was back when you had classified ads. Yeah. The producer's laughing, and I don't appreciate it. So in the Tribune, I'm looking through the Chicago Tribune. There's a thing for some company that's actually a mental institution on the north side. It wasn't too far from my apartment. And they just needed some junior nobody desktop person to come in who knew Novell NetWare.
Oh, there you go.
And I knew of Novell NetWare.
That's enough.
So I went to the library, which is a place with books. Very young producer. And I opened a book about NetWare, and I read it for a few days and sort of got myself up to speed. I think it had a CD-ROM in it, which
that's pretty modern now.
It was pretty slick. And went through and sort of got myself up to speed where I was not dangerous. And then I went and applied. I knew, I was a hobbyist. And I had been using computers as a hobbyist since the early 80s.
Okay.
But I'd never gotten paid for it.
Wow, yeah.
And so I went in there and just, sounded sort of like I knew what I was doing, and then spent the next year actually learning what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that was, this endless logarithmic doubling each year of, how much smarter and more capable and less dangerous you were through consulting and then on and on.
In the 80s and the 90s, basically, there was such a demand for people. If you went in and said, I know what Novell is, they probably made you the senior support staff for it. Because, believe me, I've been on a few of those jobs, too, where they were like, have you ever heard of Novell? Like, yes, I have. They're like, okay, we're going to actually move you right on into the senior support role, and we'll hire another person for the, Nice. And I'm like, oh, wait, and then you go to the library and hope there's a book on the subject because back then it was a little more challenging.
Now it's certainly a much more, there's an entire ecosystem to learn things. There's things like this where you can actually sit back and get good information. There's, university programs and community college programs, and there's the ECPIs and all those types of folks out there who have, basically apprenticeship type programs and vocational systems, which are all fantastic. We actually, when I was at Microsoft Support, we would tend to hire folks who had gone through some of the vocationals because they would actually have a pretty good concentrated set of knowledge. And we also didn't want them to have any weird bad habits from being out in the industry that they had picked up. So we would want to kind of mold them our way.
Well, that makes
so those
sense.
were always a good pickup.
And we get a lot of that too. So at the university, we have people that like to hire our students because they know where they are.
Right.
And they're coming out of us, and then they can sort of mold them into the people they want them to be.
Microsoft likes hiring college. Just recent grads and stuff.
Yeah,
at all layers. They have a whole program called MOC. I forget what it stands for. Microsoft Academy something. And it's designed to, take somebody quite young and get them into the Microsoft way before they pick up. I came into Microsoft in my 30s. I was already a lost cause. So.
Yeah, you're a rebel, never fit in. I know about that. So all of us came into those kind of corporate roles like that.
Yeah. I was supposed to be at Microsoft for a 1-year contract, and it's been 14 years now.
Yeah, that happens too. So you suddenly wake up and go, "Ooh, wow, has it been 14 years?"
Yeah, I've had 3 different major jobs at Microsoft. I've been there for a long time now.
So one of the questions I get asked a lot is about certifications and training and college, and I do get people coming in and saying, should I just go get some certs and go for it? And my answer to that is always, well, if you've got the skills. Certs validate your skills, not give you the skills.
Correct.
That's my thing about certifications. And so I thought I'd see what your take on that was.
Yeah, we only ever made at Microsoft one set of certifications that actually made you learn a bunch of new stuff and become mega valuable, which was the whole Ranger and Certified Masters program. But that was a really concentrated course, and for Windows, I don't think they make it anymore. The graduation rate was only about 8 or 9%. It was a very hard 3-week isolated course.
Ooh.
It had a 10-hour practical exam at the end.
Fun.
It was tough. So if you got one of those certs, you could go name your rate as a consultant. But to get in there, you already had to have a significant amount of experience. Right. You couldn't just stroll on in.
There's a lot of flux on that, and I don't want to run down any programs either. But it's certs were designed to validate rather than
that's what they do.
But a lot of stuff sort of shifted and became well, we're going to train you for the cert. It's so you're going to come in, and believe me, I've worked for those as well.
That's the risk, yeah.
And that's frustrating to me because a lot of those people don't get very good jobs and they don't get very good employment because they really don't have much of a skill set. They're just saying I had 1 week of a class and now I'm good to go.
I definitely don't recommend taking some kind of thing which is designed to help me just pass a test. And that isn't just for IT. That's for anything on Earth. You wouldn't want your doctor to go and get the
1 week class.
I passed my medical degree board exam.
Now I'm ready for surgery.
Yeah, I don't want a cram course doctor operating on me. So that's the same. You want somebody who goes through a real series of actual instruction and an apprenticeship and learn some things.
Maybe practiced a little
interning, maybe. Just that's the whole.
Should
concept.
I cut this?
Yeah.
No. I have interviewed a lot of people for mid-sized companies would hire me to interview people because they didn't have enough staff to, or expertise to talk to people about, IT security kind of stuff. And you would get these people, and they would come in and they would say, well, I've got this cert and that cert and this cert. And I'm like, well, have you ever done an internship? Have you ever worked for anybody? Have you ever, tell me about the most exciting thing you ever built. And they're like, what? No, I went to class for a week.
Yeah, I don't want the week. I would that's. I actually do. So I just did a whole presentation here at Ignite yesterday, and it's recorded, and people could go back and watch it.
Go watch it.
It's called Accelerating Your IT Career, and it's just me for 75 minutes talking about how I think that you can get really good at this job and then sort of stay good at it and then not get burnt out and just want to leave it because It's not like you're digging a ditch and actually doing real work when you're IT, but you are in a constant state of stress and, sort of perpetual fear that you're about to destroy a company or an organization when you're IT. It's a big minefield you're sort of walking through all the time. Mm-hmm. And then it's a very competitive region, the field itself. And there's a lot of folks out there always gunning for the next slot, and it can get pretty lucrative, and that makes people get kind of like, And so I have this whole, series of stuff that I talk about on how to get through that.
Good.
And I think it's actually useful. It's the only session I ever give that I've ever given. I give it at Ignite and then Ready and stuff, where people come up at the end and just say, I'm glad I came to this session and shake your hand and leave.
Yeah.
Not just, I have some other question, can you help me out about it? Like, I just want to go back and think about all this.
Yeah, I will put a link to that in the show notes so you can check it out when you're watching this. The link to Ned's session from Ignite, because those are available.
It's the only one where it's like, the whole rest of the time here, like, you're the product. Like, I'm trying to sell you a bunch of stuff. Microsoft is trying to get your cash. That's the whole point of Ignite, right, is to sell products and make you want to be part of the Microsoft ecosystem.
I do think that, so one of the problems I always see in career is cultural. So the cultural idea that you like this, so you're always doing it, ends up making you burn out because you do it at home, you do it at work, you take it to the airport and you sit in the airport and you work on code or whatever, and you just turn into like like me.
Sure.
And that's a subtle problem because companies do like that. They love the fact that you say, I don't want to go on vacation. I want to work on this new piece of code that I'm trying to write or whatever. Right. The gunslinger problem Ned mentioned is that's what I call it, is that there's always people out there trying to one-up you. There are always people out there trying to come to the company and say, I'm better than him. I can outcode him and I'll do it cheaper. And that kind of creates sort of a hostile environment sometimes. And there's a lot of one-upsmanship in all these cons and things like that, and you see that, and you see Twitter wars and all these kind of problems that come out. So watch out for kind of getting drawn into all that negativity of it and whatever.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, is talking about how to not have that negative. A lot of it is just not about the little class I give, the little session I give. It's not actually very technical at all. I cover a few areas that you need to become extremely good at broadly to be successful in this world we're in right now, like understanding network captures and stuff. But mostly it's about like interaction and communication and like reducing stress levels and becoming super knowledgeable about broad areas and protocols and things, so that when you get into trouble, you're not learning everything in the moment and learning like, I don't need to learn how SMB works when SMB is broken. I need to learn how SMB works when SMB is not broken, so that when it is, I can just focus on that, right?
And I think that's that's a really good lesson is to you need to learn more about it, not just how to get it working. I get a lot of like gamers and people that have been around, and they're good students because they usually solve a lot of problems, but a lot of times they have to sort of back up and say, okay, you need to really learn, how does this work?
Right.
Like, how does TCP work? What are the pieces of it? And it's not just about, the network is down, do I need to jiggle the cable? It's about understanding that bigger picture and trying to put that in. And I'm sure that's true with storage as well, because you need to understand how those protocols actually work together, how you put all that stuff together, and how you make things come together.
Yeah, that's the next layer. That's the next, when you get into that and you get to the next level of your career, it's past, if I just turn it off and turn it on, it's more into the, when I do that and it doesn't work, now what?
Right. Well, when you get the message that says, if that failed, contact the system administrator, and you realize that,
contact yourself.
That number is yours.
Go look in a mirror.
That's a fun feeling. Ned Pyle, I want to thank you so much for joining us here. It was fun to talk to you. You're a famous guy, and everybody knows who you are. And can keep up your attacks on server messaging block 1.0. We'd like to see that thing dead in a grave somewhere. Sure. But we really appreciate you taking the time.
No, thanks. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot.